Everyone thought he was a useless idiot, but he turns out to be the strongest hero who is pretending to be normal and immediately creates a harem. Alan used to be the strongest hero, but he got tired of saving worthless Reddit mods from the FBI, so when he was about to die, he made a wish to the mommy milker's goddess that he wants to live like a normal man in his next life. His wishes come true as he wakes up in his bedroom while his dipshit blue-haired feminist-looking brother, who I'll call Karen, tells him that their father wants to meet them. His dad turns out to be an even bigger piece of shit noble, who calls him garbage for being level 1 even after so many years and not even getting any divine powers as all nobles get. He then kicks him out of the family, claiming that he can go work in the red light district after wearing a sundress. Alan gets out of the castle, completely unfazed, as he was waiting for this moment so that he can spend this life having fun and not worrying about other people, but realizes that he still has his powers from the last life. Just before he could go wander around, he hears a girlish screaming coming from a distance. It turns out to be two girls with an incredible pair of juicy plots fighting against some monster. The lesbian tomboy wearing armor tries to slash and stab the dog monsters, but her incompetent ass can't kill them completely, and they heal back up. She tells the princess named Lisa to run away while she blocks the dog monsters, but as we know, girls are pretty stupid in stressful conditions, so she simply stands behind her while Betty the unwanted lesbian tries her best to keep the monsters at bay. Alan watches it from a distance by using his magical eyes and remembers how, when they were young, some men at a party were making fun of him for having a big ass. But Lisa stepped in and told those men that everyone likes thick femboys. This makes him want to help her in this situation, just as the incompetent warrior woman falls to the ground and one of the dogs slashes her on the body, leaving her knocked on the ground. The monsters were just about to finish the job, but Alan musters all of his magical energy and decides to become Flash as he appears in front of the princess at the very last moment, grabbing the dog by its throat. Lisa tells him that PETA will get triggered, but Alan doesn't care and kills 3 of the monsters before jumping in the air and scanning the remaining monster. He finds out that they all have a core inside of them, so he uses his special ability that creates a bunch of ethereal swords around him and gang bangs the dog monsters, giving PETA a heart attack. The armored butch apologizes to Lisa for her incompetent ass and promises to join the kitchen like a good girl next time. Alan overhears all this and walks back to them, putting his hands on her melons, and uses his healing magic to heal her completely. This heals her completely, which really shocks them, as everyone knew that Alan was a useless creep with a foot fetish, but he immediately lies that he just learnt this healing magic in the church to treat himself when girls pepper spray him away. He asks Lisa what the hell is she doing out in the countryside, and Lisa explains that while she was praying to the mommy milker's goddess, she received a prophecy that she needs to go to a faraway village and help the hero to achieve his goal, otherwise their entire kingdom will get filled with degenerate furries and femboys. That's why she left the capital alongside Betty, who was one of the strongest female warriors, even though she got defeated by even the weakest man. Alan didn't want to make the topic political, so he got up and went to fix the carriage, and surprisingly enough, he used his redo of healer magic and fixed the wagon completely. While traveling through the countryside, Lisa asks him to get a job in the royal capital as his abilities are amazing, and even tells him that she will let him sniff her socks, which was very enticing, but Alan refuses and claims that he simply wants to live a normal life away from fame and people. Lisa gets sad, but he promises to accompany her while she is roaming through the countryside in search of the hero. After a while, they finally reach the village that she was looking for, and surprisingly enough, they don't find any monsters roaming around the area, which is very rare. They walk around the village, but it looks empty until they finally see a horde of people, while a girl gets kicked out of an old man's house. This flat-chested girl turns out to be Akira, who is the current hero and holds the all-powerful sword that once belonged to Alan in his previous life. The flat-chested disappointment doesn't even recognize Lisa and asks them to take her out to lunch first. While inside a restaurant, they start eating, and Akira tells them that she was wandering around the village when she spotted a young girl running through the woods. She grabbed her and asked if she is fine, but she claimed that the dragon was going to eat her. Hearing this, she decided to slay the dragon and hid the girl in a small cave before heading into the village to get some more information. But when she entered the old man's house to ask questions, he replied that he doesn't talk to girls who are flatter than the earth and threw her out. Alan finds all of this a bit suspicious and theorizes that there is a possibility that these absolute degenerate villagers are trying to sacrifice the girl's life in order to gain protection from the dragon, and that's why they can't see any monsters around the area. This theory makes sense to all of them, so Akira decides that she is going up the hill and slaying the dragon by herself. Lisa immediately volunteers to go with her, as according to the prophecy she needs to guide the hero, and Betty obviously follows Lisa in the hopes of smashing her one night. Alan takes a deep breath as he realizes that all the three of them are girls, which means they can't get anything done on their own, so he decides to go with them, in case they get overpowered by the dragon. While climbing up the hill, Akira seems to be very confident in her abilities and draws up a plan, claiming that she will go straight up and face the dragon, while the others should go around the mountain and pincer the monster. Alan knows that this hero is completely useless and will get destroyed, so he offers to go from the front alone, while the girls go around the mountain. But Akira is high on girl power and tells him that just because he has a sword in his pants doesn't mean that he is stronger than her, and promises to prove it by sparring with him once she is done with the dragon. Alan knows that arguing with these woke feminists is useless and agrees to the plan. Akira ends up going straight up to the dragon, who immediately gets up and shoots a massive flame blast at her. She dodges it somehow and uses her special abilities to cast lightning on the dragon, but her magic is so weak that it simply tickles the dragon as he laughs at her face. Suddenly, the dragon shows her that the little girl is also here, and reveals that he simply wanted to have fun terrorizing and fatcheming the villagers, and also calls her a dishwasher, which pisses her off. She musters all of her strength and rushes in with a lightning attack, slashing the dragon cleanly before posing like a hero, but when she turns around, she finds the dragon completely unharmed. He laughs and slaps her into oblivion, which completely incapacitates her as she lies on the ground, waiting for the dragon to finish her, but thankfully, Alan comes to her rescue and slashes one of the dragon wings cleanly, knocking the dragon down. He then tells the useless trio to get out of the area while the dragon charges at him with full speed, but Alan simply uses his magic attack to throw an aerial slash which hits the dragon and stops him in his tracks. The dragon is very confused as he is the Red Dragon King, the strongest dragon in the world, but Alan immediately scans him and was ready to deliver the final blow, but the dragon starts running away like a total before jumping on top of the girls after some truly shitty animation. He promises to kill the kitchen workers if he takes a step further, but Alan doesn't give a shit and rushes in with a strike, penetrating the dragon with his sword and busting a nut so fat that it completely destroys the dragon. Everyone rejoices at the victory, and Alan realizes that these hoes can't survive a day in this world without her and decides to delay his retirement till Lisa's work is done. The next morning, he wakes up by the tree only to find Lisa staring at his ugly mug. He asks why the hell is she acting like such a creep, but she replies that she couldn't believe how a person could be this ugly and was taking a closer look. He then looks around to see the little girl sitting and watching while the flat hero Akira and the big melon Betty are having a sparring match to decide who gets to bang Lisa first. Suddenly, Alan remembers that yesterday, Lisa used Saint Class healing magic on Akira when she was injured, but Lisa tells him not to divulge this information to anyone else as it is a secret she has been keeping, and Alan promises that her secret and virginity both will be safe with him. Just then, Akira calls Alan over, claiming that he will have to fight them before he can get a chance to tap that ass. Later that day, they all get ready in the wagon, but Akira decides that she wants to wing it alone and doesn't want to travel in a wagon. Alan asks whether she would be alright, but she promises that she knows how to handle herself and tells them that she will be taking the girl with her to Epstein's Island. This makes Alan suspicious, so he tells her to beware of FBI, and she goes off on her way. Alan and the rest proceed into the wagon, where Lisa apologizes to Alan because in the last fight against the dragon, his sword broke, and tells him that she wants to go to a nearby village which is filled by degenerates, because her friend called Noel lives there and forges amazing swords. Alan tells her not to worry about it, but agrees to go into the village regardless. Meanwhile, back at Alan's house, his father and his ass brother Karen are talking about how their plan failed. It turns out that it was them who sent the monster dogs to attack the princess, as well as they made a deal with the dragon to kill the hero, as they want to take revenge on the kingdom. Karen starts shouting like a mad blue-haired woman calling the manager, but his father tells him to shut his ass up, while he turns his attention towards an old butler-looking dude and tells him to get more information about the whereabouts of the princess. Back at the village, Alan is shocked to see the area filled with furries, femboys, and other manners of degeneracy and wonders how they are not shot already, but decides to keep his mouth shut and goes into the house of Noel. Inside, they find her lying on the floor, which gives Lisa a scare, but it turns out that she was just exhausted after working all night. Lisa heals her back up, and afterwards asks her to make a sword for Alan, but she outright refuses, claiming that she has a lot of customers who want the swords in their pants polished at night, and because of that she doesn't have enough time. She then asks what happened to his original sword, which Alan then shows to her. She looks at him with disgust and claims that she can never sleep with, never forge a weapon for a guy who can't take care of it. Lisa tells her to check it once, so she uses her special abilities to see how it broke, and realizes that this sword was used perfectly to its full potential, and only then did it break. This changes her mind, and she agrees to do the job for him, and then kicks all of them out so she can work in peace. After that, the three of them decide to go inside the town to get a lodge to stay at night, but it turns out that a girl wearing a very dumb dress has been spying on them, who turns out to be working for the old butler guy. She tells him about what she saw, but he is confused because there is supposed to be only one useless female guard with Lisa and not another guy. After spending the day in the town, Alan asks whether they want to have a three-way, but they tell him to piss off and go sell the dragon scales that he scavenged at the Adventurers Guild. A bit sad, Alan walks down to the Adventurers Guild and goes over to the counter only to find another furry receptionist. He gives over the dragon scale to her and asks her to trade it for money, but this thought has never seen a red dragon scale in her life and starts shouting like crazy. This attracts the attention of the old butler alongside the lowly, who go up to Alan, and the butler starts asking how he got the scale. Alan tells him that him and his party had a fight with the Red Dragon King and were able to win it, and that's why he got the scale. The butler uses his skills to check his level and realizes that Alan is a level 1 loser, so he asks whether the hero was in his party. Alan truthfully replies saying that the hero was in their party and together they defeated it. Butler seems to be satisfied by it and wanders outside, where he tells the lowly that the guy is a complete nerd who can't even cut his own steak, let alone kill a dragon, but the lowly is still apprehensive and claims that she feels like he is hiding something. The next morning, Alan and party go back to Noel's place to check up on her, only to find her down on the ground unconscious once again. Lisa helps her back to consciousness while she tells Alan that his sword is ready. Alan picks up the slender blue blade and claims that it definitely is one of the best swords that he has ever seen, and immediately the thirsty elf starts telling him that she wants him to try it outside. Lisa immediately puts a stop to it, forcing Noel to rest before doing anything, but after that they head outside into the forest to try and slay some monsters. On the way they start talking, and Alan, the racist bitch, asks Noel why is she a swordsmith as it is usually done by dwarves. Noel doesn't seem to be that woke and tells him that it is because she lost her family when she was a young elf, and while wandering through the forest, she ended up being saved by a dwarf named Vanessa who was more manly than you. Vanessa then took care of her, but then an unfortunate accident happened and she lost her forever. Before she could explain further, the mother-trucking butler showed up once again with the lowly inside the forest for no reason, and started asking whether he is here to kill monsters, but Alan tells him to stop acting like a stalker, otherwise he will call the FBI, so the butler leaves quickly. Alan goes further and finds some monsters that he easily destroys with his new sword, cutting them to shreds, which seems to be a good enough test for the sword. But this thirsty-ass Noel is still not satisfied, and claims that they should kill some stronger monsters and drags him deeper into the forest. Suddenly, Alan stops and uses his magic eyes before using his sword to slash away the magic barrier in front of him to reveal a giant wolf-tiger abomination that gives Noel some post-traumatic Down syndrome as she realizes that this is the thing which killed Vanessa. So she asks Alan to slay it immediately, while Alan stands there confused, not knowing what the right decision to make is. Noel starts remembering about the past and how she was horribly neglected when she was young. Even though Vanessa took her back to her home, she hardly ever talked or cared for her, and spent most of her time hitting the blade over and over with a sheer sense of determination in each strike. Noel tried to get Vanessa's attention in every way imaginable, as she shouted her name again and again to no avail, and even when she wanted food, she would get no response. This pissed her off a little bit, so she would go and eat whatever she could find in the house, but even after that she would get the silent treatment from Vanessa, who kept beating away at the blade like a clockwork. At last, Noel tries to do something really drastic and picked up a sword before losing her balance and falling over all the other tools, but despite that, Vanessa didn't even look at her once to make sure she is okay. She ended up sleeping at the table, and when the next morning came, Vanessa finally completed her blade at last, and only then did Noel see something resembling a smile on her face. Finally, she snaps back to reality and with tea-filled eyes tells Alan to destroy the creature as he was the one who killed Vanessa. Alan refuses to do anything, as the beast is not trying to harm them. In fact, it is far away from human settlement, peacefully sleeping and minding his own business. Hearing this, Noel grabs the sword out of Alan's hands and with clenched teeth runs towards the beast to land a killing blow, only to be stopped by Alan as he warns her that this will be of no use as the beast has a protective spell around it which doesn't let an attack below a certain level land on it. According to him, they will need a sacred sword if they want to hurt the monster, but Noel tells him that her sword is good enough to be considered a sacred sword. Alan tells her that her sword is nowhere near the level of a sacred sword, and no matter how hard she tries, the blade won't even make a scratch on the beast. After saying that, he starts walking away, telling her that she could do as she pleases. The next evening, he goes back to the town and meets up with Lisa and Betty before telling them the entire story about what just transpired inside the depths of the forest. Lisa is confused about why a great monster would be hiding inside the jungles doing nothing, but Alan claims that he suspects someone intentionally brought the monster in this area as they used a spell around the area which made the beast invisible to naked eye. He then turns towards Lisa and asks her what was the real reason she wanted to come here, as he doubts she will come here just to try and create a sword. Lisa smiles embarrassingly before revealing that he is right, and they came here to investigate the murder of the general of their army. According to her, the general was a very righteous and good man, but one day he was found assassinated inside of his own home, with no signs of any intruders and zero evidence apart from the fact that the killer took the general's head with him, leaving the body behind. Betty suspects that this was the work of a demon, as no human possesses this skill, but they have no idea why a demon would go out of its way to kill the general so secretively. Meanwhile, inside the forest, the lowly checks up on the monstrous wolf, but is confused how can a normal human being like Alan destroy the invisibility barrier she put so easily. She then heads back to the town to meet up with the butler and gives him the report. The butler claims that this town is boring and he wants to leave, so he tells the lowly to go and kill the princess as well as the elf Noel, which surprises the girl. The butler notices it and walks back to her, telling her that she has no choice as a slave collar appears on her neck. That night, Noel starts working on the blade once again after Alan gave her a bunch of information about what the problems are with the blade, and this time she was determined to produce a blade that could be rivaled by none. She keeps hitting the blade just like Vanessa did, but ends up getting exhausted and sleeps right where she was. In her dreams, she again witnesses the events that transpired that horrific day when their home was attacked by the monstrous wolf alongside the butler who wanted to remove Vanessa from the earth just because she was trying to make swords that could rival the sacred treasures. The wolf shoves her through the house as she slides back but manages to stabilize herself before rushing in for an attack, but to her surprise, the moment her blade touched the wolf, it shattered into thousands of places while the wolf tore her apart with her sharp teeth. With blood pouring down his teeth, the monster turns around to finish Noel, but suddenly a huge bolt of lightning shocks him and the hero presents herself in front of Noel. The wolf doesn't really care and tries to attack her, but she shocks the monster once again, which it shakes off as if it was nothing before attacking again. The hero counterattacks and manages to slash the monster across the face thanks to her sacred sword, which scares the butler enough that he decides to run from the scene. The hero apologizes for not being able to save Vanessa, but Noel is distraught because even after Vanessa put all her hard work in that blade, it simply shattered on impact. She cries her heart out, vowing that she will make a blade which is better than a sacred sword. The next morning, she wakes up feeling much better and lighter. She wonders whether Lisa healed her and comes out to check, but finds no one, so she gets to her work again, while it turns out that Alan healed her at night to make sure she remained healthy. Later that day, she finally finished the sword, and this time confident that the sword was strong enough to compete with a sacred treasure, she wanders out at night all alone to try and kill the monster. She finds the wolf still sleeping and tries to spring up on it, but the wolf senses her and hits her away into a tree. She barely manages to stand up after that when the butler appears, commending her for her durability, as most people die when hit by the wolf. She once again rushes towards the monster, but with the power of bad animation, the wolf manages to dodge and kicks her in the back. The butler tells her to say her last prayers, but just as the monster was going to kill her, Alan appears in the middle and slashes the wolf away. The butler laughs and tells Alan that this was his plan, as it turns out that the lowly was entering the princess's chamber to finish her in her sleep, but finds her bed empty. Immediately, Betty and Lisa call her out from behind, as thanks to the barriers put by Alan, they can see through invisibility spell. The lowly immediately tries to attack, but Betty intercepts her and after a bit of back and forth, pushes her back. She was about to land the finishing blow, but the princess stops her, and using this to her advantage, the lowly hits Betty on the head and grabs Lisa's arm, but stops right before killing her. The princess realizes that this girl is being forced to fight when Betty hits her on the head and knocks her out cold. Meanwhile, the butler orders the wolf to kill both Noel as well as Alan, but unlike what happened with Vanessa when the wolf attacked Alan, he was able to slice through him without his sword breaking. The wolf dies immediately, and fearing for his life, the cowardly butler immediately runs away. Alan carries Noel back to the city where he meets up with Lisa, and they head up to interrogate the lowly. They end up learning that she was enslaved when the butler raided her village and killed everyone, so she had no choice but to work for him as she has no home. This reminds Noel of her own childhood, and similar to how Vanessa took her back home, she walks up to the lowly and frees her from her bounds, claiming that she will take the lowly back to her place and that they can live together in her home. This makes her really happy and she starts crying, which solves most of the problems, but Alan is still not done and wants to finish the butler forever. He goes out inside the forest alone once again and uses his special attacks to try and find the butler, but it turns out that while he was hiding behind the mountains, a demon ended up finding him and killed him before leaving the place. It turns out that the orders to kill the butler were given by none other than Alan's father himself, who has hired the demon and is also responsible for killing the general of the kingdom. He tells the demon that he wants to finish the hero as well as the princess, but his son jumps in between, telling his dad that he wants to deal with the princess's party personally. Meanwhile, Alan and his party are at Noel's workshop. They have been trying to find some leads about the murderers of the general, but no clue has been found till now. Noel suddenly gives Alan an idea, reciting a story about a certain village nearby where a ghost wearing silver armor appears at night and haunts the graveyard. Betty freaks out on hearing this story because she is terrified of ghosts like a 5-year-old, and while everyone is busy teasing her about it, Lisa decides to investigate the ghost story. Alan also agrees because demons may know how to raise people from the dead, and they can find some clues if this story is true. So, that evening, Alan and his party go to the village and find the people there hard at work, preparing for Halloween. Lisa asks the villagers if they have seen a man wearing silver armor around these parts. They have never seen anything like that, and Lisa is disappointed by their answer. Alan says that they should check out the village graveyard too, because Noel mentioned that clearly in her story. They find the graveyard empty, but Betty is fully alert, and as she hears the rustling of leaves, she immediately turns back. She was anticipating an enemy, but all she finds is a man with completely white eyes. They do not suspect anything and follow the man as he leads them to the village chief's house. They meet the village chief, who denies any sighting of a ghost wearing silver armor in this area. However, as a consolation, he invites Lisa and others to stay over for 2 days and witness the festival tomorrow. Alan takes up his offer instantly, and the village chief arranges for their accommodation. As Lisa sleeps in her room, she dreams about her childhood. She sees her uncle, who was a knight and her bodyguard. She was very fond of him, and he too adored her. Suddenly, her sleep is disturbed by the creaking of floorboards, and she goes outside to see if anything is happening. As Lisa takes a look outside the window, she is shocked to see a knight in silver armor that bears an uncanny similarity to her uncle. The knight begins walking away, and Lisa chases after him, eventually ending up in the cemetery. The knight vanishes, and then suddenly, zombies pop out of the ground. Lisa screams in terror, but then Alan wakes her up. It turns out that she was just having a bad dream, but the feeling of terror and loneliness has not yet left Lisa, so she clings to Alan and asks him to let her stay like this for a while. The day changes, and the next evening, the villagers dress up as ghosts to celebrate Halloween. They light a huge bonfire and dance around it, while Alan and the girls watch them. Suddenly, the white-eyed man from yesterday approaches them and asks them to join the festival. Lisa says that she is tired, so she will take a rest, but asks Betty and Alan to enjoy the festival. Alan is suspicious of foul play going on in the village, so he uses his magical eyes to quickly scan them. He then accepts Lisa's order and runs towards the dancing villagers. Just as Lisa is left alone, a strange smoke streak passes in front of her, and she suddenly hears the voice of her uncle. She turns around and sees him behind a crowd of masked villagers, so she eagerly runs towards him. She keeps pushing through the villagers as the night walks into the darkness. Eventually, Lisa reaches the dark forest, and the mysterious smoke becomes even more dense around her. The Silver Knight appears before her, and it is indeed her uncle. He tells her that coming to a forest at night is dangerous, but Lisa simply replies that she fears nothing because he is here with her. She recalls that he was once guarding her while she was taking a dangerous mountain route. Their carriage was attacked by monsters, so her uncle rushed outside to fend them off. He tried his best to protect Lisa and attacked a monster targeting her. However, the monster did not die with his first strike and attacked him instead. The knight was seriously injured, and the monster grabbed him in its jaw and started flying away. The knight used all his power to stab the monster through the heart, and both of them fell down into the river below. That was the last time Lisa saw him, and because the search party never found him, she believed that he was alive somewhere. Now, she asks him where he was all this time, and the knight replies that he had been burning with hatred for the royal family while hiding and plotting his vengeance. The knight tells Lisa that her father, the king, is trying to kill her, and she struggles to believe what she just heard. Her uncle claims that the emperor is targeting people born with natural gifts. He says that those gifted people include the hero, Noel, the general who lost his life, and even Lisa, who has the power of a saintess. The knight believes that the king considers people like them to be the apostles of God who will rebel against him and destroy his country. That is why he is going to kill all of them. The knight then stretches his hand towards Lisa, asking her to join him and defeat her evil dad. Lisa is stunned by his words, but she still decides not to trust him blindly. She claims that even if what he said is true, she believes that they can resolve this issue by talking peacefully with the king. The knight realizes that the girl is not going to fall for his act, So he reveals his true nature and begins levitating using dark magic. He attacks Lisa, but then suddenly, Alan arrives there to save his girl. He blocks the knight's attack and forces him to back up. Alan reveals that he has been keeping an eye on Lisa all this time, and he knows that the knight is being controlled by a demon right now. He uses his magic powers and breaks the spell cast on the knight's body to free him from the demon's control. Lisa is worried about her uncle, but he gets up and tells her that her worries are wasted on him because he is already dead. He thanks Alan for freeing him from the spell that forced him to attack his own niece. He reveals that whatever he told Lisa about the king trying to kill her was a lie. The knight then asks Alan to take care of Lisa for her, and he promises that he will keep her safe. The knight is glad to hear that, and then he makes his last request to Alan and challenges him to spar with him once. Alan graciously accepts the challenge, and the knight rushes towards him first. Alan blocks his first attack, and then the two men exchange blows while displaying their swordsmanship skills. As Lisa sees them, she recalls how her uncle once promised to protect her from every danger in the world until a man stronger than him was ready to stand by her side. Today is the day her uncle's long wish came true, and as he lays in Lisa's lap after being defeated by Alan, he tells her to stop crying. He says that she truly was like a daughter to him, and wishes her lifelong happiness as he takes his final breath. Later that night, as Alan is watching over the village from the fortified wall, the village chief approaches him. He asks Alan how long he has known their secret, and he reveals that he knew it from the beginning. All the people in this village were dead, and the village chief was the one controlling them with magic. Alan says that despite knowing that, he didn't want to bother this peaceful village. However, the village chief does not intend to live with his mercy, because he is actually a demon. He summons out his zombies to attack him, but Alan uses his power and breaks the control of the village chief over the zombies. He then sends a flying slash that cuts the demon village chief and all his zombies into two. They disintegrate, and the village chief leaves behind a magic core. The next day, as they resume their journey, Alan analyzes the magic core and finds the powers of his younger brother in it. He believes that his younger brother was behind the reanimation of Lisa's uncle, as well as the death of the general. However, Lisa suddenly gets a message from a soldier, who tells her that the general who was supposed to be dead has suddenly returned to them, and no one can believe this news. On the other hand, Alan's younger brother, Brett, is dreaming about the day everything went downhill. It was the day his mother died, and his dad lost his heart and all the faith he had in the world. He became a bitter and resentful man who looked at his sons with disgust and disdain. Brett was too young to understand what his dad was going through, and got scorned by him often. The servants talked about how Brett only played around despite the loss of his mother. Brett took out that resentment on Alan and blamed him for looking down on him, just like their dad. He suddenly wakes up in a cold sweat and punches his pillow in frustration over the dream. Soon, he goes to greet his father, who laughs maniacally as he reads a letter. The letter in his hand burns as he declares that it is time to start their revenge on this kingdom and on the gods themselves. Aghast by his father's reaction, Brett thinks that he is the only one suitable to lead this family. Meanwhile, rumors about the dead general returning to life start circulating in the city. Not only that, the revived general seems to have joined the rebellion against the king and is trying to convince the citizens to join his side. Captain Edward of the Royal Knights and his assistant are walking through the city, listening to the gossip and rumors. The assistant believes that the rumors were unavoidable, but they are spreading suspiciously fast. Edward also believes that someone is trying to spread the rumors deliberately, and his assistant asks him what he thinks about the general returning to life. He replies that it doesn't matter if the general is an imposter or a ghost. They enter an alley, where a tall, hooded figure suddenly appears before them. Both the knights get ready to fight, but the man partially removes his hood to reveal that he is the archbishop of the church. Edward asks him what he is doing here in a dangerous place like this alone, and the archbishop replies that he wants to talk to him in secret and invites him to come with him. Edward accepts his invitation, despite the suspicions of his assistant. He claims that he is not going to fight a battle, and this is simply a trip to gather information. He leaves with the Archbishop, but his assistant still cannot get over the uneasy feeling. The Archbishop leads Edward to the Knights' training grounds and then immediately dips. Edward is left all alone in the training area when suddenly, someone attacks him from behind. He senses the attacker's bloodlust in time and stops his attack, only to find that it is his old friend and Alan's dad, Craig. Edward repels him, and they exchange some greetings, talking about how they have not changed at all in so many years. Edward remarks that he has not seen Craig since his wife's funeral and asks him why he is suddenly here. Craig laughs while calling him a fool. He reveals that the Archbishop is already under their control and attacks Edward, who has not understood what is going on just yet, and Craig declares that he no longer has any need for this world. In another location, Brett is traveling by carriage to execute their plans. However, the only thing on his mind are the memories of his mother's death. He was unable to grasp the concept of death at that time and asked Alan why their mother was not waking up. Alan simply told him that all people die one day and comforted him by holding his hand. That time, their relationship was not so bad, and Brett used to visit him when he couldn't sleep at night. He asked Alan if he was a failure because their dad had called him a failure earlier. Alan tried to convince Brett that he was not a failure and that he should not pay any attention to the people judging his worth without giving him a chance. However, he could only cry because he couldn't believe his brother's words over his dad's and ran away from Alan. Soon, he began showing growth, and their father recognized him and started treating Alan as a failure instead. Brett was happy to receive Daddy's attention, and also frustrated that, despite everyone calling him a loser, Alan paid it absolutely no mind. Brett told him that he was unworthy of their family name, but Alan told him that if he ever finds himself going down the wrong path, he should ask him for help. Brett is brought out of his nostalgia ride when a mysterious figure appears in front of him. The mystery man informs him that their preparations are complete and asks Brett to report things on his end. He replies that he has used his gift to control the Archbishop and lure Edward out. The mystery man thinks that Edward is a troublesome opponent because he can nullify any gift within a 1-meter radius, and that is why he is considered invincible on the battlefield. Brett claims that his dad is already dealing with Edward, so they don't need to worry about him. He reminds the mystery man that his side has been producing constant failures and asks if they will succeed this time, which enrages the man. Suddenly, his partner teleports right next to him and reports that the hero has appeared. Meanwhile, the hero Akira and the girl Sarah, whom she adopted, are traveling through the city. Akira notices a hooded figure following them, and she quickly increases her pace. Once she reaches an isolated area, she tells her stalkers to come out of hiding, and 4 hooded men appear around her and declare that they will kill her. Akira doesn't think they are capable of doing that, and the attackers agree. However, they activated a spell that they had placed on Sarah and all the people in her village, turning her into a living bomb. As Akira tries to comfort the girl, the hooded men charge up their fireballs, and their leader declares that as soon as the fireballs hit the girl, her life energy will be used as fuel, and she will explode. They ask Akira if she will die with the girl or abandon her to save her life. Akira is in doubt. On the other hand, Edward's assistant has brought some knights along with him to look after their captain, when suddenly, one of the hooded figures appears before them. The assistant forbids the knights from attacking because he can tell that the mysterious stranger is much stronger than them. However, he declares that he is not here to harm them and offers to tell them the truth about the world. In the main city, the Archbishop and the revived General, Cyril, suddenly appear before the public. They are being manipulated by Brett using his special ability. General Cyril first apologizes to the people for the confusion and panic the information about him has caused. Then he immediately moves on to his agenda and says that he will tell them the truth about this world now. The Archbishop comes forward and says that the gods are lying to them. He claims that the gifts everyone receives are not divine blessings, confusing the people. Cyril asks them to think about it. He stresses that everyone's life is directed by the gifts they receive, yet many people do not receive the gifts they truly want or deserve. The Archbishop declares that the gods are using gifts to control humans like puppets, but there is a way to escape from being their slaves. He tells everyone that if they give up their gifts, they will be free of the control of the gods and become the masters of their destinies. The people don't believe what they hear, so General Cyril says that they have someone who can answer their doubts for them. With that, Brett makes his entry and tells everyone to look behind them. They find a giant dog-like monster there and freak out upon seeing it. Brett tells them not to worry, as the monster has been artificially created by them to help them with various tasks. Cyril says that a single monster is equal to 10,000 soldiers, and it has no weakness. Everyone believes the general's words, but believes that despite its abilities, the artificial creature cannot replace everyone's gifts. Brett says that his ability comes into play now, and the Archbishop claims that it can bring forth the true latent abilities of an individual. And even if they give up their gifts, they can become much stronger with its help. He assures that the abilities will be something that they have developed with their own will and will lead the world into a new era of prosperity. The people start believing them now, but wonder what will happen once Brett passes away. He was also waiting for that question, and he summoned one of his hooded companions to answer it. He declares that once he passes away, his friends will help the people by giving up their gifts and embracing their hidden potential. The mysterious figure removes his hood to reveal that it is actually a demon. The crowd panics upon seeing it, but Brent assures them that he has successfully established a friendly relationship with demons. He declares that the demons were the ones who informed them about the truth about gifts, and they are the ones who can help them get rid of them. He tells everyone that they don't need gifts to live good lives, and they cheer as they accept his words as truth. Meanwhile, the battle between Edward and Craig is coming to an end. With the Knight Captain on the losing side, he is certain that he has nullified Craig's gift, but he is too powerful even without it. He suddenly realizes that the source of his strength is not his gift, but his level, which Craig affirms. He declares that by leveling up, one can transcend the limits of being a human and obtain the strength to even kill gods. Edward is soon disarmed and brought to his knees, and Craig points his sword at him when suddenly, a hooded person enters the arena. Craig asks him if he has defeated the hero, but the person attacks him instead, before revealing that it is the hero Akira herself. When the demons attacked her earlier, instead of exploding, Sarah emitted a protective barrier, giving Akira the chance to finish the demons. She recalled that Alan had overwritten the curse spell on Sarah before they parted. Meanwhile, Edward's assistant also refuses the teachings that the hooded demon gave him and says that even if gifts are being used to control them, they protect the kingdom as its knights of their own will. He and his men draw their swords, but the demon simply vanishes and begins hunting down the knights one by one. Even the assistant is injured, but he is still not ready to give up on his knightly ideals just yet. Suddenly, the female knight Betty arrives there to back him up. Back at the city square, Brett is basking in the glory as the people accept him as their savior, when suddenly he hears a familiar voice asking if he is enjoying himself. He looks ahead and finds that Alan is here. If you liked this video, make sure to subscribe for part 5, and make sure to check out this brand new anime about a loser who gets reincarnated as a prince with godly abilities.